Hello, everyone. Welcome. As you're logging on, we'll give people a minute to get into the Zoom room here. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear where you're listening to us from, since we're in Zoom land these days. So as you're logging on, tell us in the chat where you're calling in from. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll get started in about 45 seconds here. Long Beach, Logan, two amazing places already. Fabulous.
Long Beach and Logan, that's great. Two places I've been.
Perfect. Downtown Salt Lake. Great to have you here. As you're joining the Zoom, tell us where you're calling from in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'll get rolling with our presentation here very shortly. Several Logan people. Oh, hello, Patrick. We've got someone calling in from New Mexico. Fabulous. We'll give people about 15 seconds here to pop on a little more. Albuquerque, New Mexico, Massachusetts.
Dang.
They just moved from Logan.
Oh.
So good. You're getting a good taste of Utah. We'll bring it to you out there in Massachusetts. Awesome. Well, thanks. As people are logging in, please tell us where you're from. We'd love to hear where you're calling in from. Manti, Utah. Hello, Michael.
Oh, I love Manti.
Awesome. Okay, we'll get rolling. I'll start the presentation off here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special presentation about the Western Firefly Project. For the next hour, we'll be hearing from Christy Bills, Entomology Collections Manager here at the Natural History Museum of Utah. I'm Ellen Eiriksson, the Manager of Citizen Science Programs at the Natural History Museum, and I'm joining you all here from Salt Lake City. I'm at the Natural History Museum right now. The Natural History Museum is part of the University of Utah, who acknowledges the Salt Lake Valley has always been a gathering place for Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. We're so happy to have all of you joining here in the Zoom world with us tonight. For several years, NHMU's Western Firefly Project has been collaborating with communities around Utah to collect valuable data about the location of firefly populations here in the state. Through the project, community members have helped discover new firefly populations in Utah and in several adjacent states. You've also helped inspire some exciting new collaborations. So before we welcome in the 2022 firefly spotting season, kicking off next month, May and June, we wanted to share some exciting finds with all of you, the data reporters who have contributed so much to this ongoing research. We're thrilled to have you here with us tonight. And of course, I am thrilled to hear from Christy Bills, one of my favorite people in the world, I would say. If you're joining us now, tell us where you're calling in from or zooming in from. We'd love to hear where people are calling from. We've got American Fork, Manti, Davis, California, Wallsburg, Utah. Hello to everyone. We're so thrilled to have you here. With all of that, Murray, Utah, hello. I'm going to pass it on to Christy Bills. Christy, charm us with your fabulous firefly knowledge. And I will say before we get too far into it, we'll have some time for questions at the end. And so if you're hearing Christy's presentation, you've got questions to ask her, please put them in the Q&A section of the Zoom screen. It's on the bottom right. The Q&A section is a great place to type in those questions, and we'll get to them at the end. Christy, I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. And Ellen, I don't mind you interrupting me to ask questions. So please feel free. So I'm just not talking to an empty room by myself for 45 minutes, so feel free. I'm happy for this to be a conversation. Thank you so much to everybody joining. I love talking about fireflies. This is great. Thank you for joining so that we can have this quick chat about this amazing project and fireflies in Utah and the rest of the Western states. So first of all, we're going to go over like what are fireflies and why they light up and why you've never seen one in Utah and what is citizen science. It's kind of what we're going to cover. So what are fireflies? They're beetles. Some people don't know that because they're called fireflies or sometimes lightning bugs, but they're neither flies nor bugs. They're beetles. And if you look closely at this picture of different fireflies, you can see that their wings meet in a straight line down their back, and that's true of all beetles. Although in entomology, you should probably never say all things because there's always variation. But the difference between beetles and bugs is beetles' wings meet in a straight line down their back and bugs' wings cross over. So if you think about box elder bugs, they're true bugs, bug, beetle, bug, beetle. So the order of beetles is called Coleoptera. It has kind of the same letters as Cleopatra. If you think about the Egyptian scarab pushing the dung beetle or the sun across the sky, it might help you to remember Coleoptera and beetles. That might be a weird mnemonic device, but anyway, there are more species of beetles in the world than birds, mammals, and fish and reptiles put together. So a famous naturalist was once asked what he had learned about the mind of the creator by studying nature. And he said, I've learned that the creator is inordinately fond of beetles. And so beetles are just very, very successful. There might be more wasps than beetles, but right now, beetle species are the top of the chain. Beetles have chewing mouth parts as opposed to lapping, sponging, or sucking, which different insects have. And that's helpful because fireflies are predators, which is interesting to think about. We think about them as like super cute and fairy-like, but they're predators. Beetles also have complete metamorphosis. So like butterflies, they start out as an egg, and then they have a larva, and then they have a pupa, and then they have an adult. So firefly babies, the juveniles, are larvae, and they look a lot different than the adults. Usually. That's another entomology, usually. So the firefly juveniles actually glow, but because they're usually down in marshy mud, they're not where we see them. And it's thought that they glow to warn predators that they taste bad. This is kind of shows you where that falls in line taxonomically. So all things that are little critters that have jointed feet are arthropods, spiders, millipedes and centipedes, insects, and crustaceans like lobsters and crabs. But within that, you narrow it down to insects, pretty familiar to us, 6 legs, 4 wings. And then you narrow that down to an order, and you have Coleoptera, beetles. And then we narrow that down one more time further to families. And even the groups of families within beetles are just, there's so many different beetle families. I don't think there's a person on earth that could name half the number of beetle families off the top of their heads. All fireflies are lampierids. And luckily the name has the word lamp in it, so it makes it a little bit easy to remember. And I'm showing you on this graphic that fireflies have close relatives, and sometimes the larvae of these other beetles will glow, but none of the other adults do. So only lampierid adults glow that we know so far, mostly. I'm always hesitant to say anything is true in entomology always. So these are not fireflies, but they look a lot like them. So I'm showing you this to say fireflies have really cute cousins, and they're using a body plan that's quite common in the insect world. So this soldier beetle up in the top center that's black with the red carapace, with like a fancy little collar, that looks exactly like a firefly. If I glanced at it, I would say, oh, that's what that is. We have a long, slender body. We have long thread-like antenna. And, but that head poking out like that, little suspicious. Down at the bottom, the black bug with the red zigzag across, kind of, that looks more rounded. That's actually a cockroach. So cockroaches and fireflies share the life strategy of hiding their head. They have kind of a little thing up over their head. It's called cryptocephaly, crypto like hidden, cephaly head. I like to think of it as like a dramatic, like fashion thing of having like a cape over your head. But there's a lot of cockroaches that look a lot like fireflies. And that's not to say that fireflies are gross. It's just to say that like a lot of bugs are cute, even ones that we normally would think of as yucky. So, and on the left, there's just a bunch of different beetles that have that same slender body plan and a black and red often body coloration. There are fireflies that are diurnal that fly during the day that the adults don't flash at all. And we certainly have some of those in Utah, and they're not part of this project. So sometimes people will send me pictures of those and I'll say, yeah, that is technically a firefly. It's technically a lampirid, but we're looking for flashing lampirids. We're looking for flashing or glowing adult fireflies. So many cute bugs in the world. Let's see. Okay, I love this graphic because it's so vintagey looking. So the characteristics of fireflies are that they have the thin thread-like antenna, they have the hidden head, the elytra, which is the shell. Elytra is such a fun word, isn't it? Is softer than other bugs, than other beetles. So some beetles are very crunchy and some are just more leathery, and fireflies are more leathery, which makes it easier for them to fly because their bodies aren't so heavy. And the other thing they have that makes them special that everybody likes is the bioluminescence, right? They have the last few segments of their abdomen can glow. So there are people who study the taxonomy of fireflies, people who study their ranges, and then there are people who study the flash patterns. And there are different kinds of technologies for doing that. There are people who are hooking up different kinds of lights to try and lure them in and stuff. Obviously, I don't expect you to memorize this, but it shows the way different species and different sexes flash to signal to each other. Now, the fireflies in the West are not, there's not so many species that they're living in the same place. But in places where different species do live in the same place, they have to have different signaling patterns so they don't call to another firefly to mate. However, there is a very famous story, maybe you already know it, about a particular firefly that the female flashes another species call so that she can lure in a male of a different species so she can eat him. So sometimes these patterns are used to disadvantage if you read the signals wrong. Mating can last for up to 8 hours. That's called first position. And then the other one is called second position. That just assures, I guess, that there's definitely fertilization happening and that no other male will interfere with the fertilization. I think that's interesting. And another thing that's really interesting is this thing that sometimes happens in insects, and it's not just this group, and that's that the female doesn't waste any energy flying or even making wings. So this is a male on top of a female, and she has stayed in a juvenile form. You see this in some moths and some wasps. They're like, look, I'm just going to do some pheromone stuff. You come to me. I'm so busy laying eggs. I'm just going to not do any flying around. And so not uncommon in insects. This is such a cool chart. So these are different beetles, mostly fireflies, some that are related, but it shows that some flash, some glow. The orange is glowing. The green is flashing. the black is just pheromones. They're just communicating in the air through pheromones, which is like what moths do, and a lot of other groups. But if you look, you can see that flashing has evolved a few times, and the glowing has evolved a few times. Now, all of the juveniles are doing it, but not all of the adults. So kind of interesting. Bioluminescence, right? We love it. It is so interesting. There's a few mushrooms that do it. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know that anybody knows exactly why. There's a millipede that does it, which is super cool. On the right, there's like a big termite hill, a picture of a termite hill. And it's flashy, it's glowy like that because there is another beetle larva that lives with the termites and makes the hill glow like that. Just, oh my gosh, so exciting. But really, there's not a lot of terrestrial bioluminescence. It's not really that common on land. Actually, as a side note, you can buy bioluminescent mushrooms on eBay and do them yourself, which sounds like fun. Where bioluminescence is really happening is in the ocean. So 75% of marine animals have bioluminescence. That's where it's really happening. So that's interesting. We love it. It's super fun to see and exciting that the world is making light like that. And how does it happen? It's an enzymatic process, and it's like a cold heat. So if you touch a light bulb, it's usually kind of warm and it's wasting heat energy. But this is two enzymes coming together, and they're not giving off excess heat. They're not wasting energy. And firefly DNA has actually been used to test to see if there's other life in other parts of the universe by gathering things like moon dust and trying to mix it with firefly enzymes to see if there's ATP, the chemical stuff that would prove that there's life out in the universe as we know it. And if it makes it glow, then it's so far no. But it's a test. Okay, so let's come back to Utah. That's about fireflies around the world, and in general, there's I think there's about 2,000 species in the world, about 160 in the US. But what's the thing with Utah? Like, what's the deal? So I've been with the museum for long enough my career could vote, a while. And in that time, people would report to me that they had seen fireflies in Utah, and I just kept a little journal of a few sightings. And from like 1998 to 2014, these are the places I thought there were fireflies in Utah. I was like, wow, that's really surprising, but this is where they are. And I love Utah history, and I have searched Utah newspapers for any mention of fireflies or lightning bugs, and I have found nothing. So if you're a better history researcher than me and you can find something, I would love it, because I know they've been here. And it would shock me that it's never been talked about in any like pioneer diaries or anything. So weird. But there's this one thing. So in 1991, a University of Utah professor like put out a call for somebody to do a science project about bioluminescence. And this kid, which I should probably track down the kid. I've tracked down the professor. This kid in Roosevelt or something did a project on fireflies. So this was mentioned in 1991, and that's it for firefly mentions in Utah history that I could find. So in 2014, I'm hanging out in my office, and I start chatting with this researcher from BYU, and he says there's a population near Utah Lake called at Goshen Pond, and we've been collecting there. It's a good population. And I said, he's such a great guy. He mostly studies dragonflies, but he knows a lot about the fireflies around the world. And I said, you know what we should do is cook up a project where you and I, because we're two separate institutions that people will prefer one over the other, but if we work together, we could just ask people around the state if they've seen them, because there might be a few more that we just aren't seeing because we're not in the right place at the right time at night. Because you have to kind of be in a specific place to see them. And he was like, yeah, we should work together and come up with this project. So that's how it started. The graphics department here at the museum was super wonderful to me, and they made these fabulous postcards. And we sent them out, I want to say we sent them out in 2015. We sent out a few hundred to different state parks and campgrounds just around the state. And there's a funny story where we contacted the manager of the state parks at the time and said, we'd like to be, we're going to be sending these out. Will you let your state park managers know they'll be coming, and ask them to post them? And he was really nice. He said, sure, for sure. But I've lived in the state for decades and I've never seen any fireflies. So I don't think you're going to get anything. And as soon as he sent the email out, we got 4 replies back instantly where people said, oh yeah, we've seen them in our park. So it was really exciting because we knew right away that the project was going to be successful. People had been seeing them. So we mailed out these postcards and they got posted. Oh, it looks like we sent them out in 2014. Time passes. And so what this is a citizen science project, and you can't be everywhere at one time. And it's a really exciting time to be doing this kind of science because we have such powerful ways for people to connect around the world, just like this meeting right now, right? It's so exciting. Like, I don't have to be in Massachusetts and Long Beach and Logan, and you don't have to be here. We don't, it's so great. But oftentimes people tell me they wish they'd been an entomologist. And I know there are people who wish they'd been a marine biologist or an astronomer, but there's reasons not to be as well. But this is a way that people can participate in science and really contribute to the science. And there are so many citizen science projects. It's wonderful. There are projects you can participate in based on your pet behavior, or the microbes in your basement, or the time that you see certain flowers come open in your neighborhood, or you can look through photos of things from space that somebody needs to evaluate, and there's more work than one person could do, or that they can hire to do. And so there's so many ways for people to participate in science. It's really exciting. And I kind of feel like the more people who participate and are excited about science, the more we can have a scientifically literate citizenry, and people can be like less suspicious of science, maybe. Anyway, that's one of the hopes I hope will come from these kinds of projects, is people feel like, oh yeah, people who do science, that's like us, right? We're all doing science. It's not a hocus pocus or people running cons. So I love these kinds of projects, and the ways that we can connect through social media or databases can really make profound bodies of evidence to help us understand the world. And it's great. But projects like this depend on a great deal of press, getting the word out. We were super lucky that a lot of places covered it for us. We probably got the best response from TV. That was good. But in smaller towns, I think people still look at newspapers a lot, which is great. We used Facebook and other methods for trying to get in touch with people to let them know. Still though, 99% of people I contact don't believe we have fireflies. So the people I'm talking to right now, if you're hearing my voice, you're like one of the 1% of people who are like, I know what's going on in the natural world. I know what's going on in the nighttime and summer in Utah. So it's hard to convince people, and press like this is helpful. So that's good. We created a super simple submission form. So instead of trying to use an already existing platform like iNaturalist, and I'm guessing a lot of you are familiar with that, iNaturalist relies on photos to be taken. And I can't think of much in the natural world that's harder to take a photo of than a firefly. They're so tricky. They're just, because they light up only when you're not shining light on them, and you shine a light on them and then they don't. Anyway, I was like, well, let's not make this hard on ourselves. So, and there's other reasons too. Anyway, we created this very simple submission form on our website. And then we just started filling in the map with people's data, and it was pretty successful right out of the gate. We get between 70 and 130 sightings a year. Some of them are repeat from different locations, And that's fine. We definitely want to have those populations confirmed. That's not bad at all, especially if it's like we got one from the same place in May and then again 3 weeks later. Like, let us know. That's great that that's still there. Some of them, I would say like 15% are populations that are like, no, I don't think you saw one at Temple Square in downtown Salt Lake. That just, or I don't think you saw one at 9 o'clock in the morning in traffic. No, some of them though were like, maybe. And I spent like a few nights sitting in weird places watching to see, and then none showed up. So I was like, some of them people report and say I saw 1 or 2, and then I never hear back from them. And they're like, we just don't know. So there's a few places where we've had sightings, but I haven't really been able to confirm population. It makes me kind of crazy, like, oh, maybe. But there's some places that I just know for sure they're definitely there. So this is the original map that we had up, and I was a little bit naive. I started this project without really having smart project management skills about this sort of thing. And I was like, look, I just want like to get data and then share data with everyone. I want this to be a super transparent process, because I really hadn't heard of a thing called firefly tourism. And I was not really aware of what the ramifications would be for these people who were generous enough to share the information, and for private property owners. So especially when COVID hit, people were looking for things to do, which is great. People love fireflies, which is great. And people wanted to go to these places, which was not great, because some of these places are not public places. There's people's farms and ranches. So people were going to places that were not capable of handling the amount of traffic they were getting. And this map was driving them there. So I felt really irresponsible and changed the map. So if you've ever seen this map, it's fantastic, but it's not the map we have publicly available anymore. We have this map available. So this just shows, I know this one is a lot less exciting, but it's subtle, and it protects people's private property. So it shows like, these are the places we've seen them, with kind of a sense of the density of how they've been seen, without telling people the address to go see an exact field and park 5 cars next to somebody's cattle field in the middle of a small town. Yeah, because there's places I can send people that are appropriate, and they were going to places that weren't. And I think people were not happy. So anyway, which is really another interesting concept, is how to make firefly tourism in the West sustainable, revenue generating for these small towns, which I would love. I would love it to be safe, sustainable, and environmentally responsible. So like, yeah, let's preserve where they live and keep people happy. So there's a balance between local communities and visitors. Firefly festivals, right? Okay, so seeing them is one thing, that's great, but another part of it is we have to have specimens to be able to do genetic analysis and to make morphological comparisons. So when we go to a population, we do collect specimens. Now, normally with bugs, I say there's just no way you can affect the population, really. Tell your kids to collect bugs, it's totally fine. With fireflies, it really is a little bit different. Each population is isolated from other populations and somewhat fragile, I think. My opinion is that it's not good to encourage people to collect fireflies. So me and the volunteers that are working on this project make an assessment at the time. If it seems like a very small population, we'll collect just 2 or 3. If it's a really abundant population, we might collect 6, 7, 8, and then we're sharing them with other institutions. So they're being mailed to other universities and collections, so other researchers have eyes on them, and they're in the hands of other people that can study them. Some people are uncomfortable with that, and I respect where they're coming from on that. We do try and be very cautious though with the collecting, and we totally discourage other people from collecting who are just interested in having fun with them. The ones that we collect full data. We either pin them or we put them in alcohol so that the genetic information is preserved. And then we database them so that the information is available. Even if the specimen isn't in hand for other researchers can get the information on in these big data aggregators and see where they were collected and contact us for more info. So they're not just in a cupboard. The information is out in the world to people who know how to get that info. The website is called Scan Bugs, and there's a lot of entomology collections there and lots of great photos if you like to look up pictures of bugs and mapping. So these are some places that we have specimens from. Yeah, we have sightings from other places, as you saw on that other map. This is where we actually have specimens from. So this was exciting, but then in about 2019, we started really expanding and finding populations in Wyoming, Nevada, Idaho, Montana. Oh my gosh, I lost my mind. Somebody must message me from Montana and I was like, really though? But it was another entomologist and she sent me specimens from Montana. So super exciting. We have specimens from Wyoming. Holy cow. We knew there were some at Great Basin National Park. We don't collect in national parks, but they've been sighted at a couple places there. But then a volunteer drove out to the Ruby Ridge Mountains, which are north of Great Basin. It's kind of the middle of the state across the border, a little bit further over in Nevada. And they might, I'm not positive about this, but the specimens that he collected might be the first bioluminescent fireflies collected for science in Nevada ever. I lost my mind. I was so excited. It's really exciting stuff. And then Colorado actually probably has a dozen populations easily. If you look at the map of like all the sightings that we have in Utah, we have them documented in 27 of the 29 counties. I would really like to delve deeper into Tooele and Carbon County. They won't cough up the info I want. I'll get them eventually. But Juab and Iron County, I don't have any data from, but those are little, we'll hunt them down eventually. But I feel like we could get the same amount of data out of Colorado eventually, like that many different populations. And that's on the other side of the Rocky Mountains. So do they have the same species as we have in Utah? Or do they have Eastern species? I don't know. But it's really exciting. So we had to change the name from the Utah Firefly Project to the Western Firefly Project. And that was super exciting. I was like, yeah, let's not stay in the borders of the state. Let's get partnerships throughout the West and see what we can document and see what the range is of all the bioluminescent fireflies that people don't know that we have. This project, so now we're looking at 8 years, has spawned a lot of other spin-off things, which is exactly one of the things that I love about science so much. It spawned a children's book called The Mystery of Lucy's Missing Lantern. And it's amazing. It's a great children's book. It's set in Cache Valley and it talks about different animals and different places, and it's really good. It spawned a partnership with the Albuquerque Biopark. So that's a zoo, but it's also a conservation place. And they wanted to document the fireflies in New Mexico. And because we already had a platform, they had their people report the New Mexico fireflies into our platform so our data set could grow, but they would also have a hosting place. And it's just wonderful to partner with other people who are doing great work. We created a conference for people working on fireflies in the West with the Biopark and the Xerces Society, which is an invertebrate conservation group. We also created a display of the fireflies in Utah. And one of our amazing artists here in the building created a great big firefly that actually glows. And some of the components of that exhibit are being hosted in the lovely town of Nibley, Utah, where there's a firefly park where they're actually doing really good welcoming the public, but also preserving fireflies. We're also working with the University of Colorado Boulder. They're doing some research on the flashing patterns of fireflies and documenting fireflies in their area. So I love the partnerships and the way it grows and the way people work together across institutions. And working to talk to children, working to talk to other researchers, working to talk to people who are gathering data for us. I like this kind of part of science, is that we build relationships and partnerships. This is why I think fireflies are interesting. So when I first started doing entomology, I knew that there were species that were undocumented, right? There's just species that we just don't know yet. And they're probably like little brown beetles, little, unremarkable things to us that aren't that exciting, right? But somebody could name them and they would be, the taxonomy expert of that group. The ant expert here at the university campus just found a new ant species in his backyard in downtown Salt Lake. It's little teeny tiny, it's super cute, little teeny tiny ant, like the head of a pin, super cute. And I thought, yeah, that could be my work some days. I could discover a new species of something, and that would be cool, right? What I didn't realize is that the entire state is covered with this incredibly charismatic species that so many of us don't know about. Now, longtime ranchers know about it. People who have farms usually know about it. But those of us who recreate outside, and I feel like I've covered the state, I feel like I've been everywhere, but I haven't hung out in marshy places at night. And the first year I used the data that had been provided, I tried to find them myself. And I spent a year going from Moab to Bear Lake and didn't see a one. So the next year I met with people and had them point me to where they were. And then I started finding them all the time. Like, it was much easier when people showed you. So some people knew where they were there, but most of us did not. And now that they've been brought to the attention of researchers and hopefully brought to the attention of members of the public, and now that we know and more people can know, what I'm wondering is, can this excite people about our very own backyard? Can this excite people about wetlands? The fireflies might not be the most important keystone species. It might not be something that, like, oh, without that, everything would degrade in the environment. But will it make people care more about the marshy areas around them? Will it make people think, oh my gosh, Utah is more exciting than I thought? I don't want to just save places where I can drive my Jeep. I don't want to just save places where I can rock climb. I also want to save places where there's fireflies to show my kids, or just to have a sense of wonder. So I'm hoping that this project also extends to increasing our sense of environmental stewardship and our falling in love with our own backyard in new ways. So that's kind of another outcropping of the project that I'm hoping will come of all this. There's been these are the kinds of projects that don't happen by one person. Most science doesn't, but especially this kind. BYU, Southern Utah University, has helped with the specimens that are, or the species that are down the southern part of the state. Canyon Country Discovery Center down in Monticello, great folks down there have chased down fireflies for us. The in-house marketing team has been amazing, and IT and exhibits. But the reason this project has been successful is because people have trusted us with their data. They've trusted us with a sighting, and I take that responsibility very, very seriously. And it's just many, many people putting little pebbles in the pot to create this wonderful, enormous data set. It's super, super exciting. So I'm really, really grateful to everybody that's contributed and participated. And I hope we have a continuing, ongoing relationship that you feel like you get value out of. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you have some questions that I can answer now about where the project's going or anything else.
Awesome, Christy. Thank you so much. While you were talking, Becky Yeager commented on the Nibley Firefly Park, and at the bottom said, "Christy, you are awesome," because you are. Well, so while people are thinking of some questions to type into the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, feel free to type in whatever you guys want to ask. I've got a question to kick us off. I'm wondering if you've got advice for data reporters heading into the 2022 Firefly season here in the West.
Yeah, if you've reported in the past and want to tell us about the same location, we'd love to hear it. That's great. We would love to know that that population is still there and still doing well. If we've collected from a place, we don't need to go back and collect there, but we'd love to know that you're still seeing them, because we want to know if populations become extirpated, if they don't exist there anymore. Late May to early July is when they fly. Although sometimes we're surprised that they're a little later or a little earlier. It's weather dependent. I mean, you can tell when it's been a late spring and it's extra cold, or yeah, I mean, use your best judgment. I'm going to say be safe, respect people's private property. I'll have to say that caveat. But the places you want to go are marshy. They're not ponds, they're not lakes, they're not rivers, but they're places that have streams that kind of move through them. So they're often in pastures that have water that just kind of flows through a little bit. But I've been surprised. I've seen them in golf courses where there's like a wet area with cattails. I've seen them in places, I've seen them in subdivisions that just had an area where that was spring fed next to houses. So I would ask around and be surprised. Like, I think I know where they are, and then somebody tells me and I'm totally surprised.
Marshall's wondering if there's a name for the variety of fireflies here.
Yeah, I hate that question. No, I love it. It's great. It's a totally legitimate question. They're in the genus Pyractomena, Pyractomena, Pyractomena. And they're close to the species Dispersa. So, but they're not Dispersa. I'm not a taxonomy expert. And the folks I work with who are taxonomy experts are working on coming up with the exact species that it is. So back east, which is just across the Rocky Mountains, there's a species Dispersa, but these are distinct enough that they're probably a different species. And I'm not the person who gets to name them. So I'm trying to get them to name it Utah-hensis. I'm like, give us a firefly. Come on, name it after our state. So that's what I'm pushing for. But there's a weird population in Moab. So Moab has its own fireflies. They are different than the ones found from Idaho down to Beaver over to Nevada. They're a little bit faster, higher flying, a little bit bigger. And it's not one population. There are like 5 or 6 populations of fireflies in Moab. We've collected two specimens. That's it. But I have maybe 7 or 8 or 9 sightings. They are a very interesting, weird. And you'd think Moab, there's so many people, and they're not super far. They're like in the city. I think as more people go there, though, they're going to be not living there. So I don't know. Anyway, Moab has some weird ones.
So speaking of Moab and dryness, someone was asking if you're worried about drought affecting firefly populations.
Yeah, there's a couple things. So development is a concern. Light pollution is a concern. And drought, of course, is a concern. There's a population north of Duchesne that I visited, collected, was so excited to have in hand and document. And then they had a big fire. And the next year I went back and couldn't see any at all. So I'm going to go back this year and see if I can see them, see how their population was affected. Certainly drought will affect it. But, as humans, we're constantly moving water around. We're controlling where the water is. There's not much water that we just like let it do its thing. There's a lot of fireflies where there's farming. So where we let the water keep the ground wet, they do well. Where we spray for mosquitoes, anecdotally, the fireflies are not there. I'm not saying that the spray affects them. What might be happening is that the spray decreases their food population if they're eating mosquito larvae. And this is just anecdotal. I don't know that it's not been scientifically proven. There's a lot of questions about fireflies we have not answered. We don't know what yet. So not that we shouldn't spray, because mosquitoes actually have human health implications as well. So I'm not trying to say what we should do. But yeah, drought's going to be a concern. Yeah.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point too about that as things are sort of changing and things are getting drier in Utah, already the second driest state in the US, getting information on where these fireflies are living now, these populations across the West, it's great to have, because as things start to change, maybe you start to see shifts in these populations. And so because we know so little about them, the more info you can get now, the better.
Right. Yeah. We even love it when people report and say, we used to have them at this place when I was growing up, but I haven't seen them since like 1984 or something, or I haven't seen them since the mid 80s, or because then we can kind of look for patterns of, they used to be here, what changed? There's a woman who runs a farm in Spanish Fork called Thompson Farms. She's exceedingly generous with her time and energy, and does like firefly tours of her farm for free, which I think is madness. And she has worked really hard to try and get the county around her to preserve some of the land around her, because there's fireflies around her as well, not just on her farm, and to control the water that's coming through for her, because it's preserving the fireflies, and to try and get the development around her to not have the lights on and aimed at her property at night in the summer. So there's a lot of factors she's trying to control. It's impressive hard work, not getting a ton of support.
Dale is wondering if there are daytime, nighttime temps that produce the greatest number of active fireflies.
I think that's something we don't know yet. We're not quite sure yet if, like, I think it's more about like wind, because they're not super strong flyers. They're like okay flyers. They're not like a wasp that's super, they're like a little bumbly. I mean, I collected one time with my finger. Like, you can just kind of pick them up sometimes. So if it's breezy, you won't see them very much. They'll just lay low. And I think if the moon is super bright, they're less likely to fly. There's a field that I have a very consistent population of, that I can just go take people to and be like, there they are. They're almost always there. But it's by a road, and it's every time a car drives by and the lights are on them, they stop. So we just have to wait for the cars to stop. So they're affected by lighting. They're affected by breeze. And then sometimes we just find that the populations are just a little ephemeral. Like, there might be something affecting them that we just don't understand or know. There's just a lot of questions yet to be asked and answered.
Related to what you were saying earlier about people reporting like, oh, I saw fireflies when I was a kid and I don't see them now. Michael was just commenting that he's seen a couple in his backyard in Manti several years ago, but that's the only time he's ever seen them there in 30 years. So maybe some shifts happening there too.
Mm-hmm. Sanpete County definitely has populations, and I'm trying to remember exactly. Richfield is maybe a different county, but Richfield has a good population at their fairgrounds, and I know that's not too far away, right? Yeah, there's definitely populations in Sanpete County. Yeah.
Luke is said, thanks for all of this. I took a picture of what I thought was a firefly at night, but it was a continuous glow, not a flashing. Does this happen with fireflies, or was this just something else?
Send me the picture. Let's take a look. Also, where'd you see it? So sometimes somebody sent a report to me that they saw a firefly. They saw a whole bunch of multicolored fireflies at Dead Horse Point. And that's in near Moab, but where it's really, really dry, like super, super dry. And I thought, multicolored fireflies at 3 a.m. at Dead Horse Point. So I wrote to the park manager and I said, is there any way? And he was like, that's not even a thing. It's a little embarrassed. So yeah, things can be confusing. I think that person might have been on drugs, but sometimes people will see a bug fly under a light at night and they confuse it for a firefly. That's not uncommon. But sometimes fireflies are just not where they're supposed to be. So a researcher that I work with said he saw one just out in the sagebrush, like it must have blown, or like what was it doing? But it was far from any water source. So, I mean, bugs are weird. You know what I mean? There's things they should be doing. We should see them by sources of water. And then who knows? You know, maybe you saw one, you probably saw one, but send me a picture.
Yeah, Luke, send in a picture. We'd love to see it. And if you can put it on there's a website, the form is up on our website. You could probably fill it out there. And Christy can get in contact with you. Let's see. Oh, here's a quick. So Patty was asking if there's a website or a link that tells us where they can go see populations. You spoke to this a little bit in your talk.
Yeah. So there is a balance. I want people to be able to go see them. And the closest place to Salt Lake is the Swanner Nature Center in Park City. So they are a place open to the public. They have a boardwalk, and you can Swanner, it's in a strange place. You feel like you're in a shopping mall, which it kind of is, but towards the back of it is this lovely little nature center. They do really great exhibits and stuff. I love their work. And it's really mellow. There's not a ton of people there. But anyway, they have this boardwalk that is, it abuts like an easement place where it's all marshy and grassy, and they get fireflies pretty reliably. So that's a great place to go where you're safe, you can park, you're not on private property, and you can see them out around you. I always say you can't shop the wild. So don't go like planning to do some massive event or like with a Girl Scout troop and promise them, or like you're going to do a proposal with the fireflies. Like, just be grateful when they're there, but you can't shop the wild. They're probably there first week of June. Maybe it's cold. Maybe it's breezy. Maybe you're there at 11:30 and they decided to turn in early for the night and they quit flashing. So I always want to tell people, like, I can't promise you, but that's a good place to go see them that's close to Salt Lake. If you're north, go to Nibley. They're fantastic. If you're further south, there really isn't any great place that I know of. Unless you want to go to Moab and hunt them down for me.
I bet some people do. We're getting a couple of questions from people who were wondering about a recording of this presentation. We are recording it, and I'm pretty sure the plan is to email it out to everyone who registered to attend. And so if you're here, that means you'll be getting the recording in an email from us at some point.
Now, everybody in this is only for data reporters. This is not open to the general public. So so the point of that is that, like, I give a lot of talks in libraries and stuff, a couple a year, but everybody who I'm talking to now has reported data to us. And if you write to me and say, hey, we are going on a trip to Manti or this particular place, is there a population you'd like us to check on? I feel like we're in conversation. I would be happy to say, like, oh, if you're going to Vernal, do you want to check on this population? And I would be happy to, like, I feel like, you're part of the team. So if you want me to tell you like a specific place, we could, like, not to just go hang out, but, to do some data reporting. Yeah, we're in conversation, I hope,
Awesome. It sounds like Cheyenne wants to know the difference between male and female fireflies.
Me too. I have a great answer. Probably the females are slightly larger and have a different flash pattern, but I don't know exactly, to be honest. Yeah.
Scott lives 10 miles east of Albuquerque, and he's an opinion juniper forest, and he said we have a larva that glows for up to 2 minutes at a time during June. I think it's a click beetle. No one else around has reported them. They're only about 3/16 inches long. The back half of the body glows. Any idea of bioluminescent beetles in that area?
No, but when you say pinyon juniper, it makes me think you have not lampirid larva, but I want to say Fengogidae, which isn't very helpful family name, but do have a different kind of beetle, not a click beetle probably, but something else. I mean, you could gather some and try and rear them if you find that they're abundant and you don't think it would affect the population. If you collected a few, put them in a Tupperware container with the same substrate that you're seeing outside, pretty deep, so they could bury themselves, and then saw what came out as an adult. That would be kind of a fun thing to do.
Jennifer said that she reported a population at a Logan sign on a public trail and is wondering what the next steps to verifying the population is. And also that she was hoping to document more herself this summer, but she's ended up moving to Massachusetts.
Rude. Actually, Massachusetts has a really, really great project called Firefly Watch. So there's, I mean, definitely firefly research you could do from there. We just continue to verify that population. So Cache County has, oh my gosh, they're like Utah County probably has the most. Summit County has a ton. Well, Uinta and Duchesne County have a lot too, but like Cache County, I mean, they could rename it Firefly County. There's so many. So we probably would not go collect from that population because we have collected from other populations in that county and we're pretty sure we know what species it is. But we'd want to know again that the population was there. So if somebody was on that trail again or in that area, we would want to know it's been seen again or it's not been seen, you know. So just to verify that it's still there would be interesting. We're going to change the map or the way people report. We're looking to change it. So when people have been giving us data, sometimes the data is too vague for us to really know where they're talking about. So we're hoping to integrate like a Google map. So when people say, I saw it here, they can use like a Google map feature and like put a point on a map for us so we can be more specific. We can do better analysis of habitat and stuff. So hopefully we'll have an improvement. I wish I'd have done that 7 years ago, but I didn't think about it then. So yeah, just an ongoing reaffirming that the population is still there.
Someone else is saying that the map only showed a few sightings in far eastern Nevada. Do you suspect that there are many other populations further west in the state, but that they're just in remote, sparsely populated and infrequently visited areas, and so not observed and reported as often?
Yeah, we have been talking about Nevada, me and the other researchers on this project. Obviously, I think Utah's the second driest, and I think Nevada might be the driest state. Do you know? Nevada's the driest. But even in these dry states, you know, there's wet areas, right? So Great Basin and this Ruby Ridge Mountains, but that was one population that had been reported to us. Then we sent the volunteer out to collect them. Amazing. But that mountain ridge, there's like I was going to say a bank of mountains. That's not the right term, but I imagine there's more. But yeah, not a lot of people recreate out there that I know of. So I do imagine there's more. I would never send people out there to just like go look randomly because it might take a lifetime to find them. But if people knew of them, I would love to know that because I think that's really, really interesting. We do think that they extend further, but there's just no way to know. Nobody's been looking at them. Again, fireflies don't have any medical or agricultural significance. So there's not a lot of money in studying them, you know.
Yeah, we got to start getting some grants, like the Wonder Grants. That's what we need.
Yeah, the NSF Cuteness Grant.
You heard it first here, folks.
Not a thing. It's not a thing.
Can you believe it? John was saying that Great Basin National Park is a great place to see fireflies in June because it's so dark and they can be seen near Baker Creek Campground, and that he first saw them in 1977.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my gosh. The woman who runs that park is just delightful. She is a wonderful person. And I've been in touch with her to say, hey, we have a lot of sightings there. If you're interested, I can provide data. But we would never get specimens there because national parks are very rigid with their collecting requirements. So
we've got time for one last question from Marshall. Oh, then Brian just put something into. Let's do both. We'll do two more questions. Okay. And so I'll do Marshall's last. We'll do Brian's next here. It says, Governor Cox has designated Dark Sky Month. Do you see additional legislation coming online to help protect dark skies and fireflies in the future? How could people help with that effort?
You know, what is interesting is the complexities of a project like this and how advocacy work can be antithetical to getting people to trust me with sharing data. So obviously I I have a conservationist mindset, right? Like I want to have healthy, clean air and water, and I want these places to be protected. But there are some people who have the misunderstanding that if I see a firefly, which are common throughout the state now, we know, I can somehow like throw up a fence around their own private property and say like, this is now protected by the federal government and you can't even own your own land or something. Like they're afraid of government bureaucracy. And so I step away a little bit from advocacy work because I want to create a barrier between me and that so that people don't see me as someone who will cause them harm by them sharing data with me. Isn't that interesting? I want them to think, well, I can freely share data with you because it's not like you're gonna, create a conservation easement on my land, which we're not trying to do. We can't do that. The amount of paperwork would make me cry. And also it's not necessary. But people do worry. And so some people have even said like, I know where they are, but I won't tell you. Like, okay, all right. Because I'm worried what you'll do. Either harm the firefly population or try and protect it in ways that will interfere with my rights. Like, so my real mission is to tell people like, what an exciting place we live in. You don't have to go to the Amazon to see exciting stuff. There's exciting stuff right here that we found just by asking people, and people were nice enough to tell us. And if this stuff was here and nobody's noticed before, what else is out there? Like, let's all go look. Let's all go look in our backyards, in other places, unusual places we didn't suspect. There might be more places that we hadn't even thought of and more things to discover. So I really just want to engender a sense of wonder and get people excited about Utah again. Not that we don't treasure our outdoors, but even more so in the marshy places, which are tied to water conservation. So I know that's a long-winded answer.
But I think I love your point to, your question, will wonder save us and can it? And I think that's an exciting thing to think about. And, fireflies do have a magical sort of vibe about them that I think really can get people excited about their backyards and the larger backyard that is the state of Utah. And so there is something there with that. And as Christy knows, you're a wonderful science educator, and science education is a great thing. And the more people feel connected to stuff like that, the more likely they are to be interested and passionate about conservation around the state. And so I say, spread the good word to the people you know and spread the wonder. We're going to end on a science question, and then we'll wrap up for the night. Marshall's wondering if there's a difference with some he said he'd seen soft greenish glows and some that have a soft yellow glow, and if there's a difference between those fireflies.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that too. Yeah. So Marshall, in Utah, you've seen both colors?
No response yet. I'll chime in.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know exactly what's going on with that. Like I have seen that as well. And is it diet related based on what the firefly's been eating? Is it age related based on how old the firefly is and how well they can make light? Is it environmental based on like minerals in the water they're around? Yeah, I think that there's a lot of questions that could be answered based on maybe studying spectrometry or something, like the light waves emitted by different fireflies.
Maybe a good plug for our current special exhibit at the Natural History
Oh yeah, we
Museum.
have the most beautiful exhibit right now. I love it so much. It's called Color, Nature of Color, and it's just a breath of fresh air. It's just so lovely to walk through. Very interactive, highly recommend. And I don't say that about every exhibit we have, but this one really has something for everybody. It's really gorgeous.
And Marshall says yes on multiple occasions was his response. Well, everyone, we've had a wonderful hour together with you, and I hope you learned a little bit of something about fireflies. I suspect I personally learned a lot about fireflies. We're so thrilled to have you, Christy, here at the Natural History Museum. Thank you for hosting this wonderful community engagement project, and thank you to all of you, the data reporters who are out there noticing wonderful things about the world and telling us about it so we can help learn little bit more about it too.
Yeah, stay in touch.
Please do stay in touch for this 2022 season and beyond. We're so excited to see what else you're going to find. We'll be out there looking as well. And stay in touch. Cheers, everyone. Thanks so much for a wonderful night.